So I've already told you guys about my career at Michigan and what led me to enter the transfer portal and my portal experience and how I ended up at Utah State. But today I'm gonna tell you guys my high school recruiting story because like everything else with me in football, it is far from linear, but there's gonna be a lot of good information in here. So definitely keep watching. And also like, subscribe, that really helps the channel. Then definitely wanna share this with a high school athlete you know, because I'm gonna kind of give some tips on what to do when you're an under-recruited player in high school. So they're gonna wanna see that. And then drop any questions in the comments. This video came from a question, and you know, like I've always said, I have 6 years of playing college football, a lot of knowledge, so keep the questions coming. All right, so the story starts way back, over a decade ago, back in 2012, when I decided to enroll at Don Bosco Prep. And for those of you that don't know, Don Bosco, super football powerhouse at this time, coming off a national championship, had won 6 state championships in a row, hadn't lost a game in like 3 years. So yeah, they were the real deal. And a common practice in Jersey is for a lot of high schoolers to repeat the 8th grade. Now, I didn't do that. And on top of that, I was also a full year younger than people that were in my class growing up my entire life. So basically, once I got to Bosco, there was like a 2-year age gap between me and then some of the older kids in my class. And that kind of led to I guess you could say, development disparity. So there were guys who entering freshman year were 5'9", 5'10", 175. I was 5'4", 120 pounds, soaking wet. Like I was way less physically developed than most guys in my class. But freshman year, that didn't really mean too much. I played freshman football, was fine. So then we get to the off-season program, and I'm starting to grow a little bit, like hit a little bit of a growth spurt. I think I went to like 5'7", 5'8", 150, but I was still pretty far behind most other guys. Like I said, I was 2 years younger than the kids that were in my class. So there were kids that were 5, 6 years older than me that were juniors and seniors. And I remember, like, it was funny, like I'd be in the weight room. I was always a hard worker. Like that was never in question. People always knew that. But there were times when we would be like benching and they'd be benching like 315, 325, 335. And I was struggling with a plate on each side. Like I could barely get 135 up. Like I remember the first time I ever did it was, I wanna say March of my freshman year. And bro, I was ecstatic. And I just look over and it was some dude like repping out 255. I'm like, damn bro, I'm way far behind. But regardless of all that, end freshman year, I mean, you know, I'm in pretty good shape. Like a big thing with high school football is if you show the coaches you're willing to work, they're gonna work with you too. Like they're gonna work to develop you. They're gonna have a good relationship with you. So we finished up winter workouts. I made a great impression on the coaches. They understood that, okay, this is a guy who, he might not be the most physically developed yet, but he's someone that's gonna work. He's someone that's always gonna give his all, give 100% effort. That's never gonna be a question with him. So we can work with that. And then camp comes. And one thing about that year is we had a pretty senior laden team, but a lot of the receivers, I didn't even play DB back then. I played receiver. Actually, I played DB and receiver my freshman year, but I was a receiver. Like in workouts, I was doing receiver workouts. I was watching receiver film. Like I was 100% a wide receiver. But going into that camp, there were probably like 2 or 3 receivers that were injured. So they were down. They didn't practice for probably like 3-4 weeks. And in that time, I got a ton of reps. Now, like I said before, I was super physically underdeveloped still. I want to say I was probably running like a 4.9 40, and that's like being generous. But, you know, I'm kind of thrown into the deep end, thrown in with the wolves. Like I'm practicing with dudes who were contributing on a national championship winning team. But like I said before, the coaches knew I was going to give effort, knew I was going to give 100%. So did I get beat a lot that summer? Yeah. There was this one time I remember I had to block one of our linebackers, and he pretty much just like threw me to the side, threw me to the ground. And I actually posted a joke about this the other day on my IG. Go follow me there if you don't already. But he was like, pulled me to the side and he was like, yo, have you ever thought about quitting football and like maybe playing ping pong? Like maybe that would better suit you. At the moment, I'm like, damn, bro. Looking back on it, it's kind of funny. I have a good relationship with that coach. So like, you know, I'm not hung up on it or anything. But we get to the season and, you know, I'm just a backup. Like I'm with the twos. Like, there's a difference between being a backup and being with the twos. I would say being a backup is if something happens, you're going in. being with the twos is you're just kind of there because they need people to practice with the second string. But if a starter were to go down, they would kind of do something else to put someone in that spot. So that's pretty much where I was. Like, I remember one of our receivers did actually go down and they put one of the DBs at receiver. But anyway, so sophomore season gets over with. I was playing on JV, playing that sophomore football too, so I was playing that, getting a lot of snaps, a lot of reps. But I made a lot of improvements that year, both physically and in terms of my skill set. So I was definitely on an upward trajectory. I was getting better. The coach just saw that, so there were encouraging signs. And like I said, being a sophomore, being undersized, underdeveloped, there wasn't really anything I could do about that. I couldn't control that. So I just focused on, all right, I'm gonna get better. And then junior year, which is the real important year for recruiting, that's when, I'll be in a position to contribute. But the next round of winter workouts, it was more of the same, more of me being one of, if not the hardest worker on the team. The coaches understanding that I'm a guy that could be in position to help contribute the next year. And in my head, I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a contributor. So we get to spring, and while I said I was the hardest worker, there were just some parts that I just couldn't escape, almost couldn't outrun in a sense, which is funny because, like I said before, my 40 was like a 4.9, like 4.95 my freshman year. In between, like, I worked speed training a ton. I lifted, did speed work, all that stuff. I just wasn't really getting that much faster. Like, going into my junior year, I'd say I probably still ran like a 4.8, 4.85. And mind you, this is big time football. Like, when I was in high school, we played against guys like Dalvin Cook, Jabril Peppers, Rashawn Gary. Like, if you're running a 4.8 as a receiver, it's just not cutting it for real. And it's not even like I was a bad football player. Like, in terms of being technically sound, like, I was probably the most technically sound receiver in Jersey. But anyways, we hit the summer, we brought in some receiver transfers. We just had a bunch of receivers, and we're all competing for spots, competing for playing time. The real problem was my physical skill set was just so lacking that the other things I did well, like, they weren't able to overcome that. So we get to the season, I'm still at this point I'm a backup. So I'm just a backup receiver, but like, you always hear that junior year, that's the important year for recruiting, for getting offers, and I was not playing at all. Like, had maybe 3 snaps on varsity the first 4 games of the year. But we get to the midway point in the season, and our offense, it was kind of struggling. Our passing attack wasn't really explosive. So we were trying some different experiments, different things to try and jumpstart that. So one of the things that we did was we put one of our DBs, who was one of the more athletic guys on the team, we moved him to receiver. And this is ahead of a game against Passaic Tech. So at this point, we had beat St. Thomas Aquinas that year. We beat St. Joe's Philly. We were one of the top teams in the country. And Passaic Tech, while they're a good public school, at this point in time, it just wasn't a really matchup that we were worried about. So we were gonna test some things out, and we ended up beating them 35-0. But that game, I did not play a single snap. Like, I didn't get in garbage time, in regular time. And that was, like, for me, in that point in time, it was heartbreaking. Like, I remember after the game, I literally got in the car with my pops. I just kind of broke down crying, and I asked him, I was like, yo, am I not good enough? And obviously he consoled me, comforted me, but I really feel like that game and that day was like a turning point in my life almost. Because at that point in time, I'm 15 years old, so I'm at a crossroads almost in life. Like, football is what I love, it's what I want to do, but I'm not seeing the results I want to see at this point in time. So I'm like, all right, well, I have 2 options. Either I can feel sorry for myself, just give up, quit, kind of call things where they are, or I could pick myself off the mat and keep going. And I remember I went to sleep, I was feeling terrible, went to sleep, but when I woke up in the morning, I told myself, I was like, yo, I will never ever feel that I'm not good enough at something I ever do again in my life. Like, it's just, I won't let it happen. And for people that don't know me, I can definitely at times be a little maniacal in how I go about things. And I think that the deep-rooted cause of that is because of that day. So, I mean, I told myself, I'm never gonna feel this way again. I'm never gonna feel a feeling of inadequacy. And so I woke up and I was like, all right, done feeling sorry for myself. I'm not gonna allow that to happen. We're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to work. So something I also didn't touch on was since I wasn't really playing on varsity, and since we weren't really blowing teams out to the point where we were getting backup snaps, our offensive coordinator, like, still close to him to this day, but he approached me about playing some of the JV games just to get used to being the guy, get used to being in games, get used to getting catches. And I wasn't really in love with the idea because it was like, yo, I'm a junior, like, playing JV, that's embarrassing. But I was like, all right, let me put my pride to the side. Let's get these reps. I'm not getting reps in the games, and reps are reps no matter where they come, what they are. So I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna be completely committed to getting better as a football player. And so playing these JV games, there were games where I was just dominating, which I was like, all right, if I'm gonna be someone who is gonna be playing on varsity, I need to be dominant on JV. And in season, I did definitely make a ton of strides as a football player. Like, I think the coaches could notice that I was getting better, and the coaches, they definitely noticed too. Like, I remember we had a game where the receivers played pretty poorly, so at the meeting after the game on the next day, we're watching the film, and he's like, yo, I got a guy who's been busting his ass all season, who has been getting better. Like, why should I deal with all this stuff when there's a guy who can do just as good, if not better, if we were to give him reps? So he was like, all right, like, Hunter, you're gonna get ready. Like, you're gonna be featured in the next game. So all week in practice, I'm practicing. We got packages where I'm supposed to be getting the ball. I'm supposed to be the featured receiver that game. But remember what I told y'all about coaches telling you you're gonna play a lot. It never happens. So we get to the next game where I think I played like 3 snaps. Like, honestly, that moment should have been when I learned that lesson. I don't know how I got tricked again by it at Michigan, but yeah, no, that game did not play a lot. Went to the next game. It was a playoff game against Paramus Catholic. They beat us. Season was over with. So my senior year, I'm at a crossroads. I'm like, do I stay at Bosco or do I transfer somewhere? And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I just don't have the ability to allow people to think that they're right and I'm wrong. So I was like, yo, there are people that said I would never play if I went to Don Bosco. If I transfer, I'm gonna be making them right. So maybe I might be being hard-headed. It might be not the best decision, but I'm gonna stick with it because being at Bosco is probably the best possible outlook for my future. So I'm going through the off season, and I just had a different mindset, different mentality. Like, the things I did to get better that off season were, like, for a high schooler, it was almost, like I said before, it was maniacal. But I really feel like if you have the desire to be great in something and you don't have like a maniacal obsession with getting better, then you're really just talking, you're just paying yourself lip service, because that is the only way to really see results towards greatness. So I was just super locked in that off season. Like, in the mornings, I would wake up at 5 a.m. 3 days a week, throw with our quarterback. Actually, Tommy DeVito is with the Giants right now. He's another person who, like, spent his entire high school career just super focused on getting better. I'd be doing strength training, speed training multiple times a day. So, like, there was a desire to get better. And I think that all the work I was putting in, coupled with the results I started seeing at the end of the year before, started giving me like a newfound confidence in myself, a confidence that I had really lost between the end of my sophomore year and my junior year. And I could really tell that I was gaining a sense of confidence because there would be these workouts we'd have in indoor facilities, because Jersey in the winter outside is just not feasible. But there were like high schoolers from kind of every school across really the northern part of the state, across North Jersey. They would be there and we'd run one-on-ones. So the year before, if I see someone who had a bunch of offers, a bunch of stars, I might hang in the back of the line. I might not really get a lot of reps. Now, at this point in time, I was jumping the line. I was like, all right, whoever is up right now, I'm going against them, I'm gonna beat them. Like, that was my mindset that entire offseason. But the one problem that I was encountering was, because I just didn't have any film from high school, there was literally zero college interest. Like, it's not like I was some freak athlete who go to a camp, run like a 4.3 and get offered. I didn't have film to get offered by. So I'm watching all these guys around me get offers, and I'm not even, coaches, when they come into schools, they're not even calling me in to talk to them. So we get further along in the off season. Now we're in the spring, and I'm like, okay, if I'm not getting any college interest because I have no film. So it's like, all right, I gotta go to camps now. And by this time, I was just fully confident in myself. So I'm going to these camps, I'm balling. So at this time, I had started to get a little bit of speed. I was still not fast, but I was probably running like in the mid 4.6s, low 4.6s. So it was fast enough to do something at the high school level. But a 4.6 isn't really gonna get a college coach's attention, especially if you're not 6'4", 6'5". So even though I was at these camps, I was balling, just still didn't have any type of recruiting traction. So I realized I had a problem. I was like, all right, not gonna dwell on it, we're gonna figure out a solution. But like I said before, this is gonna be the part of the video where we start going through some of the tips for high school football players who aren't really being recruited right now. So the first one was I needed a way to get exposure for myself. So what I did was every single workout, every single camp, every single 7-on-7. This isn't how 7-on-7s are now. This is like the very introduction of 7-on-7 like culture. But I had someone record it so that way I could compile everything that I'm doing. And while it wasn't ideal, it was better than nothing. So I put together my highlights from kind of the spring circuit. And tip number 2 is find coaches on Twitter, find coaches' emails, and just reach out to them, contact them. Now, they might not respond. That does not mean that they didn't receive it. It also doesn't mean they did receive it. It's just, it's better to send someone something and maybe they see it and discover you, as opposed to saying, oh, they're never gonna see it, there's no point in me sending it. So now you just aren't on the radar at all. The next thing I did, which is important for you guys to do, is go to as many camps as you're able to. Now, able to might be physically, financially, but you have to be attending camps to put yourself on the map. And the great thing about a lot of camps nowadays is that they'll invite other colleges to attend. So say you're at Rutgers camp, you'll get coaches from Monmouth, coaches from Ivy League schools, coaches from D2, D3 schools. So while you might not get a Rutgers offer, while Rutgers coaches might not notice you, you could catch the eye of some of these other coaches. And if your goal is to play college football, then that's what you need to be thinking about when you're hitting camps. So I went through camp season. I had a couple really good performances. Like there were camps where the coaches at the schools, they came up to me, were like, yo, we're super impressed with you. We're gonna follow you on Twitter. We're gonna reach out to you. We're gonna keep in contact. But the hard part about not having any film is, like I said before, I wasn't some explosive, crazy athlete. So not having film was just a really big detriment to me. Like there was no way I was gonna get offered without it. But the thing that stood out to me was, all right, the work I'm putting in, have been putting in, is starting to show. Like I'm on the field with guys who are 3-4 stars, and I'm not only competing with them, but I'm outplaying them. So in my head, it's like, okay, I know I can play at the next level. I know I can play D1 football. It's just a matter of, I don't have the film yet. So we gotta go through senior year. I just gotta ball. Like no ifs, ands, buts about it. I can't control what happened in the past. I can only control what I'm gonna do the upcoming season. So we're going through camp and I'm one of the starting receivers. I finally worked my way up to a starting role. And now it's just about, okay, let's keep working to be able to establish ourselves as the guy, as someone who in the toughest league in America is able to be a difference maker. So about halfway through camp, I remember we called a screenplay, caught the ball, jumped up, and one of the receivers missed the block. I get tackled and I fall on my shoulder kind of awkwardly. And I heard like a little bit of a pop and my arm just kind of fell off. So after practice, go to the trainers. He's doing a bunch of like range of motion exercises on me, a bunch of tests. And he's like, yeah, you probably tore your labrum.